How's it going, everybody? This is Dominic Minchella. I am the Kansas City Chiefs beat writer for OnSI, co-beat writer that is, and the host of the Kansas City Chiefs Insider Podcast. Thank you guys so much for stopping in today. What a day it has been. Going into week 2 for the Kansas City Chiefs as they take on the Philadelphia Eagles in a week 2 matchup, Super Bowl rematch. A game that's got a lot riding on it for the Kansas City Chiefs. Whether you believe that this game is a must-win, or whether you think that this is just too early to tell, and hopefully the Chiefs get their first win in front of their home fans and of the season, this is a big game for the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going up against a team that really embarrassed them on their pursuit of history last season in the Super Bowl. And while they have displayed themselves as a team to beat the Philadelphia Eagles, that is, the Kansas City Chiefs, they have probably the best roster still, at least in the young season that we've seen, that could go up against the Philadelphia Eagles from the AFC. Regardless of the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs are up in the upper echelon of teams that could take down the Philadelphia Eagles. However, there is some concern, though, for the Kansas City Chiefs, at least some that stemmed from the first game of the season. Now, if you missed the podcast yesterday, we dove into some of the offensive linemen who were out there, the starting offensive line, on how they performed, how they could improve, some areas that they didn't necessarily succeed with, and others that you got to take their performance for a grain of salt. That is great. If you missed that, go check it out. We've also touched on in the podcast, no less than a few days ago, talking about the defense and how the Kansas City Chiefs defense needs to start owning in and getting a lot tighter in keeping the score close. If you might remember me saying, there's a lot of 20 or more points scored on the Kansas City Chiefs defense that has been leading to their defeat because of their offense not being able to step up. However, going into this game, I've got 3 defenders, switching it from the offensive line that needs to improve to the defensive side of the ball that needs to improve. I got 3 defenders who need to really step up from their first week performance going into the second week, or rather 2 that need to step up and 1 that needs to remain the same. And I will start off that list right now with the guy who needs to stay as consistent as he can, and that is cornerback Trent McDuffie. Now, Trent McDuffie, in terms of Pro Football Focus, he was the second best defender for the Kansas City Chiefs in week 1, earning a overall grade of a 70.2. He was successful in his coverage. He had a 69 grade, and there's a lot of area to his game that he could definitely still improve on. But looking at how he was last season compared to how he was a start of this year, he looks really good. If the Kansas City Chiefs are looking to find any way of winning this football game against the Eagles, they're going to need Trent McDuffie to be on his game in coverage. We've seen a whole lot from the first week against the Dallas Cowboys where the Eagles were able to move the ball down the field a whole lot, whether that be passes from Jalen Hurts or rushing up the center or up and around with Saquon Barkley. There are ways that this Eagles defense offense can attack you. That being said, knowing that the Kansas City Chiefs know how important this aspect is, Trent McDuffie is a player who I'm looking to have a really, really good game for the Kansas City Chiefs. And if he doesn't, it could be very difficult for them to step up and find their way into a victory. Going on to the 2 guys that need to improve, there are 2 that stand out. Firstly, both veterans, by the way. Firstly, Nick Bolton, linebacker. Now, let me just say, when I was watching that game against the Los Angeles Chargers, I had some high hopes for the Kansas City Chiefs defense. This is a defense that was arguably the best part of their franchise last year. They were holding their opponents to close one score games to elevate the offense and helping them get some victories. But after the Super Bowl defeat, there's been a lot of traffic for the Chiefs defense, so to say. And one of the best guys to stop that in the past has been Nick Bolton. You wouldn't believe that, though, if you saw the way that he played in the first week. Overall, earning a grade of 41.1 on PFF, which is well below average, ladies and gentlemen, for a guy like Nick Bolton. In fact, he ranked the 62nd linebacker out of the 72 that qualified. Let that sink in for a second. He had a defense grade of a 41.1, a run defense grade of a 59.7, a pass rush grade of a 61.1, but his coverage grade is what brought him down, as he had a 36.6, ranking him as the 55th best linebacker out of the 62 that qualified for that coverage aspect of the game. Now, Nick Bolton is a guy that when he's on, and we've seen it. Over 100 total tackles in 3 out of the 4 seasons that he's played. A newly extended Kansas City Chiefs who is looking and hopefully going to adjust accordingly to the Philadelphia Eagles. And if he's not on, it could really spell bad for the Kansas City Chiefs. I hate to say it, but Nick Bolton, Steve Spagnuolo has called him several times like an anchor for this defense. If he's not on, if he's not performing, if he's not doing the best of his ability, and it doesn't have to be flawless, he just has to be a guy who they can rely on, not a guy who is earning a 41.1 overall PFF grade. And I understand what these players, when they're looking at these grades, they do not care. They know that they're better than how they play, regardless of how other people are grading them in their performance. But all in all, Nick Bolton needs to improve. Another guy, and the last guy, that needs to improve as he goes into his first year of his contract extension, similarly to Nick Bolton, is George Karlaftis. Karlaftis, man, he had an interesting game. He had his overall grade thus far into the season was a 45.7, which is not good, as we know. He ranked as the 100th best edge rusher out of the 103 that qualified. He had a pass rush grade of 58 and a run defense grade of a 57. Just not a whole lot that you like to see out of George Karlaftis, a guy who has been a prime defender for the Chiefs, leading to him getting a healthy extension this offseason. Now, there are definitely areas that he could be happy with. He was able to get a quarterback sack, but that was his only real tackle of the game. He had 1 solo tackle, 1 quarterback sack, 1 assist, and he had 0 forced fumbles, which is not a problem. Like I said, it is week 1. But where it is a problem, though, is there are areas that he could definitely improve on. He got penalized in his eyes wrongfully, but regardless, I think that the first week, now that it's past them rather, I think that there's a lot of ways for them to improve. Karlaftis is a guy who's wouldn't have gotten paid if the Chiefs didn't believe in him. Nick Bolton isn't a guy who would have gotten paid if the Chiefs didn't believe in him. Trent McDuffie is trying to get paid. All 3 of these guys have to show out and show up for the Philadelphia Eagles game. I know that it's early in the season, but it's not a make or break, but it could definitely inflate or deflate the trajectory that this Kansas City Chiefs team is going on for weeks 3 to 9 before they hit their bye week. That being said, though, ladies and gentlemen, as always, be sure to follow me over on X at Dom Minchella. I post and repost every single day. You're not going to want to miss any Kansas City Chiefs coverage. You can also follow us over at KC Chiefs on SI over on X. All posts are exclusively free for you. Kansas City Chiefs on SI is the place to get your Kansas City Chiefs news. With that, be kind to one another. We need it now more in the world than ever. and I'll see you guys tomorrow.